and by doing remote testing, with participants from everywhere on the planet, very different cultures, you're gonna learn so much more.
And one benefit, by the way, also of remote research is that if someone is in their home, that they can actually take the camera. They can show you their entire home. It's of course you could visit someone as well, but I find that that's somehow easier.
It's better to ask wrong questions and do really a bad moderation of a usability test than not doing a usability test at all.
We worked on our values. So what it is that we value. And one of the things that we discover that we value is working based on customer input or being customer centric.
Welcome everybody, let's get started. The tech cloud is still building up, so we're still learning about who is joining the gang today, which is great. I would like to tell you a bit about We Are Online, why we are online, and what's that all about. Nora and myself have been hosting a couple of meetings on remote work in general, or as I prefer to say, online work, because I don't feel that remote, right? I feel quite close to everyone working together with online, which I really appreciate. And what we were missing a while ago was like the social aspect of remote work. Like, where do we go to have a beer together and discuss work topics? So we put together that meetup a while ago, and as it happens, we had one physical meetup, and then lockdown forced us into an online working mode. And yeah, again, as it happens, actually we enjoyed it, so we continued doing it. We had a couple of interesting online remote work meetups recently, and I'm really looking forward to this particular one, which is super interesting. And I think this is where Nora can tell us a bit more about it, right?
Thank you. So first of all, thank you all for joining. As Michael already said, we have already hosted several meetups about different topics. So for example, we had a meetup about remote hiring. We also had a meetup about homeschooling by forced homeschooling, not by choice. And yeah, like we also had a first aid meetup when the whole lockdown started. So we've just been trying to cover different topics. And especially this topic is also very dear to my heart because I'm also a UX designer. And so I'm really excited to host this meetup today and to, yeah, especially discuss user research and how it can be done remotely, and how you can achieve your business goals through user research. And yeah, so basically, I think maybe half a year ago, I think the idea that I got from a lot of UX designers was that UX design is something that is more easily done remotely, but research, it always has to kind of stay in person. And in a way, of course, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you want to observe the user's environments. You can also control the environment a little bit more, but especially now, of course, a lot of people were forced to move towards remote user research. And no matter what your situation is, whether you were forced to now do your research remotely or whether it was by choice, with this meetup, we really just want to discuss different challenges as well as advantages, disadvantages. And in general, we like to do our meetups very interactive. So to everyone in the audience, for us, the audience should really interact as well. So feel free to ask questions. We try to do it as interactive as possible.
What's the percentage of user research that you're doing on a daily basis? Anyone? 50, 100%, 70?
It depends. What do you consider doing research? I mean, is it time spent face-to-face with customers, or is it everything around it as well? Because if it's everything around it, including structuring our work, that's 100%. But if it's face-to-face, then it's probably a lot less.
And what kind of activities would you then all like see as part of it?
I mean, how do you decide? So, for example, of course, planning the study itself, but then doing a retro on how it went. Is that part of user research, or is it already something else?
It's a good question, because I think that communicating your findings well to the rest of the team is also a crucial part of user research. So, yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's for sure. I was referring to the period when you internally, I don't know if you do that, or at least for yourself, you're thinking, how did it go? And changing, making improvements to your process. And how much of user research work is evangelizing about why it should be done, why this way and why not another way. So is that also research work?
It's everything is, right. May I also may I also direct that question towards the audience a bit, so that we get an understanding of your interests also?
Feel free to either unmute yourself, or you can also write it in the chat.
Totally. Right. I see some of you do have a lot of interest and would do more, but actually do little. I understand we have the full spectrum, right, of some people doing very little user research and some of them doing 100%. I think that would be a good time to actually introduce our panelists. Nora, what do you say?
Yeah, perfect. So for our panelists, we tried to find panelists for this meetup, for this panel discussion, that have very diverse backgrounds, so that also depending on what your background is, so whether, for example, you work for a product company, you work for a startup, you work freelance, that you can also ask your questions and just get different insights, and so you can really connect and learn from each other. So let's start. Sonia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sonia, and I'm in Vienna. And I was the one who said 100% because my actual job title is customer experience researcher, so it would be weird if I didn't do it. I'm currently at a big enterprise and insurance company, multinational insurance company with a base in Austria, but I also have experience doing research at a startup and also for a nonprofit. So that's a mixed bag of experiences there. And yes, we have done research mostly in person before COVID, except for interviews that were happening always online or through phone. And now when the COVID situation, when it started, we had to switch everything to remote. And that was a challenge and a blessing, because we have a monthly regular usability testing cycle. And so from 1 month to the next, we had to switch immediately to make it happen for the next month when the lockdown happened. So it was a really quick switch. So that's my background.
Thank you. Next one, Max, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Max Scheugel. I call myself a designer, a UX designer. So I do like wireframes and specify the early ideas of a product. And I was working for a company that had a very fancy and posh office in the first district of Vienna, next to the St. Stephen's Cathedral. And I was inviting participants to come and visit me in the office so we can do some in-depth interviews or some usability tests. And I was like, I was seeing that these people, they are so impressed with this office, how fancy it is, how many people work there for this web page. I was doing user research. And I found out this does not do me no good to impress the participants. I want to get honest feedback. So I don't want to have an impressed participant here. So that's why I switched to remote user researching. This was like 3.5 years ago. And it also had the advantage that before that, I only had participants that were willing to come to my office in Vienna. And since the webpage had 10 times more audience in Germany, we neglect a big part of our users. And so I switched to remote testing to also include them. And when I switched to remote, I made sure that no company logo is behind me in the webcam, and I searched for a very not so posh part of the office as a background for my video, just to get rid of this kind of bias that they are impressed by all these people and the posh offices. And then yeah, this was my beginning at user research, and I'm now working as an UX consultant. So since March, I'm freelancing, and I have continued to do remote user research because also I don't like to travel so much. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. I hate traveling, especially by plane. So I will do a lot to avoid that. That's about me.
Thank you very much. Evelyn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Evelyn. I'm from Rotterdam, so based in Holland. Since May, I've also been working as a freelancer, so I pivoted towards being a brand strategist and copywriter, but focusing on online content and also helping people with market research, where my skills as a user researcher help a lot. Because before that, I was for 6 years a user researcher. And I worked on a variety of projects, but mostly for very new projects, very new products. And actually my last company where I worked for 2 years, we made products for innovators like entrepreneurs to use. And we also did a lot of coaching of entrepreneurs, which I helped with doing their market research and reaching their customers. So basically UX research for very new products, which they call customer development, if anyone is familiar with it. But anyway, so I've actually always been the only user researcher on the team in the company. Some of you might relate that you actually have to go out and convince your colleagues that they should listen to you and take a look at your personas. And yeah, so I've also mostly taken a role of product owner. So I've always worked very closely with the developers. And for my last company, where I worked for 2 years, it was a hybrid company. So we had an office in Rotterdam, but we could also work remote. And a lot of my developer colleagues worked remote. I did from time to time, and I also worked for a couple of months from Barcelona. So there I worked entirely remote. So I have quite some experience with the challenges that come with communicating effectively with your colleagues, getting your findings across, also with doing interviews and usability testing at a distance. So yeah, I'd love to tell you more about it and discuss the challenges around it. So that's a bit about my background.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Clo, can you still tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I'm Clo. I'm from Paris, France. I'm a UX designer and UX researcher, and I've been working on some conversational projects, so chatbots and voice bots. I've been working independently for 2.5 years. So I have my design studio, which is called These Two Shall Grow, where I want to approach UX design and UX research with a mindful orientation towards users and research participants. And recently in March, I finished a 9-month job for Europcar, which you might know, it's a car rental company. So I was a conversational designer and UX researcher there.
Thank you very much. So we thought that when we jump into the conversation, it would be interesting to give a bit of context regarding what's your how you approach user research in your organization, but also personally. And that would be the first question that I would like to elaborate in a bit more detail, maybe. And please, everyone, if you have questions, just jump in, either in chat or in person. If you turn your video on, that's totally appreciated. You can always switch it off if connection problems arise. So first question, maybe Sonia, may I approach you with this? Would be what is user research like in your organization? Is that how do you approach it at Unica? Is it like a dedicated department that is doing all the research, or is it integrated in product development teams? And how would you describe it? How do you do it?
All right. So I've been a lone researcher for still the longest time that I've been at Unica, for 2.5 years exactly. But then last October, we got an approval for more dedicated resources. And let me give a little background on how that happened. Basically, I'm and all the other researchers, qualitative researchers, are in a team called Customer Experience Team that is part of a construct called Digital Strategy and Solutions, which is basically kind of a digitalization, agile innovation unit, a bit of an odd unit inside the insurance enterprise. And inside this team, like customer experience team, so first of all, you have to realize that it's not very common for especially a European insurer to put out a job post for a customer experience researcher. That's very unusual, and that's kind of shows what kind of mindset the team lead of customer experience has in our team. So I've been very lucky that we have somebody who's really pushing the idea of design thinking, customer centricity, et cetera, on a kind of higher level, and has that dedication and has that drive and pushes the entire team. And so this team is a customer experience unit that works sort of as support, facilitators, coaches, evangelizers for the team of digital strategy and solutions itself, but also for the entire Unica as a whole. So we work opposite teams that know how to work agile and do it, and you know, they know what customer centricity is, etc. They strive to do it. Of course, they have challenges, but they know what the deal is. And then we have parts of the company where we work with people who have never heard of it, and they are very comfortable in the ways that they are working in. You know, with their dedicated old traditional processes about how insurance is done and how it should be done. And so we have these kind of, we always have to adapt our approach towards the people that we're working with. So it's more like you could call it sometimes, it could be a consulting unit, although we try to decide which projects that we get involved in. So we don't just do what people tell us, we do it with them. So when I thought about answering your question, what came to my mind was, in fact, what the principle behind how we do research at Unica, or qualitative research at Unica is what we learned the hard way, is that the core belief that we have is that people learn best when they experience something for themselves. And we apply it to research as well, which means that at the beginning, I was the one that gathered the requirements, prepared the research plan, recruited the people that I thought were fitting best, did the interviews, and created a report. It was a really nice, quality-wise process. I mean, I was in control of what the data was and what the findings were and how to present it. But it failed at one important thing, which user research should do, which is developing empathy for your users and customers, and feeling the ownership of the findings that you get from user research. So I was creating reports, of course, this is a classic, I was creating reports that nobody read. And they did not find any way into the backlog. And we had this thought, why is it not finding its way to the backlog? Why are people not realizing that it's urgent or important, etc.? And that's when it hit us that it's only possible to value something if you've experienced it and if you feel like you created it too. And so now our approach to research is only participative. The team is involved from the beginning until the end. That also means that not only do they observe the interviews, but they also, or the usability tests, but they also take notes, and we work with the notes that they created. We analyze the data together. In fact, we are facilitators of the process. We don't do it for the team does it, and we help them find the learnings in the data, and we help them make sense of it. What does it mean for us now? What kinds of decisions do we have to make? This is the single most important principle.
Now, can I ask a couple of questions? Like,
sure.
If you talk about a team, do you mean the customer experience team?
No, I mean
also
our
developers and designers.
Yes. So yeah.
Just wondering, like, how do you do that at an interview? Because I can just imagine like someone being interviewed and then like 10 participants and someone just being like,
I should have been a little more specific. We do this for usability testing or concept testing.
Okay.
So if there's something where people have to give feedback on, that's where we use this method. If it's interviews, I mean, sometimes we have people listen in on the interviews as well as they are happening, depending on what topic it is. Or we spread the transcripts. We disseminate them.
Yeah, and even with the usability tests, you don't find that it makes a difference to how participants behave, because that was also always my concern if I invite more people to watch.
We are in a lucky position that we don't have this challenge. We are using a tool that obscures the visibility of observers. So the participant only interacts with the facilitator.
Okay.
They know that observers are present, but they are not visible.
Okay. Yeah, I guess then, I don't, like, for me, I always felt like you have to tell people, like, other people will be watching, and I was always
we tell them.
even just that fact that would kind of scare people. But you say that it doesn't really make a difference from what you
We
see.
find that people forget really quickly.
Okay.
So they are
Cool.
not concerned.
Mhm.
Especially because what we are using, so maybe I should mention that, we use Look Back. I don't know if you know this tool. For conducting usability testing. And we've done it also before when it wasn't remote. It's just super useful to record the sessions. We did it before the lockdown, even when people were in person, because we wanted to stream the sessions live to the team that was observing in another room. And that's what Look Back allows you to do. But yeah, people forget really quickly that there are other people observing them. They just focus on the task and they are thinking, and yeah.
Very
and we also
convenient.
make sure, we also make sure to them, look, like to say at the beginning, look, you can't hurt us with what you're saying.
Mhm.
You can just, the more honest you are, the better.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia. That was very interesting. So if I understood you correctly, you have like a small group of experts that do the research, but you're working closely with the development teams, I understand, and help them to understand the users in the best possible way,
Yes.
by also having them join the interviews in some cases, maybe not in others.
For us, it's really important. So it's on one hand developers, but for us, it's very important to involve business owners.
Mm-hmm.
So people from the business, the stakeholders that will actually then make decisions about the product.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually have very little exposure to this kind of way of working and way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So, Evelina, do you want to continue? Same question to you, basically. What's it like at your place? How do you approach it?
Well, for my current place, for my current position, I'm doing market research on my own. But I can explain to you how we went about it at my previous company.
Right.
So my previous company, well, I didn't do everything remote because back then we didn't have to yet. So we did the sessions, often the usability sessions, just at the company. But indeed, if we had to do it a couple of times remote, I would often send, like, specifically about usability testing, I would send them PDFs beforehand with like the tasks they had to do, the scenarios, and send them the clickable prototype or the website. And then I would ask them to screen share, and then I would walk them through the process. And I found that was that also helped. We also looked into Look Back because I think it's a great tool and we used it for a while. But my company, well, probably some people will recognize this, but my company at that point didn't prioritize paying for Look Back. So this was kind of a workaround. So yeah, that's what we usually did, and then just recorded with like, just a recorder next to it. Yeah, but so the biggest challenge I found, and so apart from the usability testing, we also did interviews. Like I did them on my own often and just calling people. The first biggest challenge I found was like I've tried to convince them to join in, but developers were so stubborn. They were like, oh no, just write us a debrief. We don't have time for that. We're now developing this feature. So that's one of my biggest challenges. And then afterwards, writing a really good debrief that they would read. So yeah, I see that as almost half of the UX work, at least, to communicate it well enough to your colleagues that they actually read it. So making nice visuals and very concise posts and stuff, and kind of like nudging them, hey, it's up there.
It's interesting that you say that it's the biggest challenge. Sorry, because we basically also discovered it's the biggest challenge or problem and just decided to get rid of it. Like, we don't need to do reports anymore because people work on the team like on the results. There are no reports anymore.
But
So
how do you get like developers to work on the results? Like
it's it has to be prioritized. So we have also Scrum Masters or product owners, and it has to be basically taken into account. It has to be calculated into the sprint. It has to be budgeted for in the sprint, and it has to be dedicated. Like it's not just something that happens when we say like, oh, look, attend. No, they have to commit to it, that a certain number of developers are dedicating this amount of hours in the sprint to working on or like actually observing people.
And yeah, that's something that comes from the organization, I guess, that really prioritizes that this needs to happen.
It has to, I mean, you have to find basically how we did it. We worked on our values. So what it is that we value. And one of the things that we discover that we value is working based on customer input or being customer centric. And then it was really easy to justify any actions after that, because how can you say that you value customer centricity when you then say, I don't have time to observe users or to, to get to know them, to get the users' problems. So like when everybody commits, like this is what we value, this is what our principles are, then you can hold them accountable and you say, look, you say you believe this. So like, ergo, we have to do this. You can't say that it's not important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that it is so important. My experience was that just, I guess also as the only user researcher, and I do have to say that the company I worked for, they were kind of in a stretch when it came to product development, because they were trying to develop too many products at the same time with a too small team. And because of that, the developers were already super busy, so it just didn't get the priority it needed, I thought, as well. So that caused the specific issues I had. But still, with the good debriefs, like really writing with the developers in mind, I did notice that helped to get the findings across. But I completely agree that having people actually participate and be there. I many times invited developers, and some actually joined to watch the sessions, and they said it was super valuable. And that's also the thing with like doing remote research. I think that makes it even easier, especially if you're doing an interview. Someone can so easily pop in and just like join it for as long as they can. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for these insights. I think there is different approaches that organizations are taking. I mean, when we are working with product development teams, we usually have one UX person on the team, which makes stuff a lot more easy, right? Because you have a continuous flow of information, continuous communication. But obviously, organizations are set up very differently, and prioritization, priority on UX is really key, right? So
yeah,
if it's important, you have to dedicate the time and the capacity to it.
Yeah, I think it's getting better, though. From what I've seen, there's way more attention for UX research and way more job listings for it. But yeah, when the times get busy.
Yeah. Right. In terms of when to do user research, I think that's also an interesting question. Like when would you do that? Is it a one shot at the beginning of product development and then off we go, or what's it like?
All the time, right? Well, yeah, I think it's such an integral part of product development.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would like to give the question also to Max and Clo. Clo, well, I think you can talk about a lot of different experiences that you've had, and especially Max, I would be curious to know your experience also with with the previous organization that you worked for. So maybe you can share a little bit
Okay,
what you
sure.
experienced there.
So I think when to do user research, I like to start to analyze some competitors or do usability tests with a competitor product before designing the product. So often you have competitors out there who are in the business longer than you, and so it's always very insightful to see what they are doing right and where they have problems. So probably the first evaluation I do with real users is with a competitor product. And to Nora's question, the user research in an organization. So I scheduled a meeting, and it was recurring every 2 weeks. And I invited all the product owners, and we watched usability test videos there. So we didn't do any live usability testing because this is the overhead is too complicated, and if participants don't show up and so on. So I used to call it usability video workshop. So all POs and also developers were invited, but I focused on POs because they were doing the product decisions, and they also had more interest in user research, so they show up more often. And it was a meeting for 1 hour, and every 2 weeks we watched 1 hour together of usability videos. So you see some users trying to do a task on our system, and how they react, and how they succeed or they failed, and then we discuss it within the group, and every product owner took his to-dos with them, and either wrote some tickets for the next sprint, or had some further research questions which we were discussing then. So this was one of the parts how we lived this user-centeredness. So it was really important for me that they spend 1 hour in watching users, because as you said before, writing a report will not bring you there, and you cannot outsource it. For me, it's like outsourcing your holiday. You don't outsource your holiday. Yeah, you have to experience it, and it's the same with users succeeding and being excited and happy, or failing and feeling dumb and frustrated. So you have to experience this in person. So that's what I have never wrote 1 line of report in the last 5 years, I think. And I even went so far that if the PO didn't show up, I canceled the session. So I terminated it, and the participant get his refund, but he was like done in 5 minutes instead of 1 hour, just to give really the demand here that the person I'm doing the user research for, which were the product owners, that he has to present and experience it on his own, on her own.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Max. Regarding the context, I understand you've been inviting product owners. How did you make sure that also the teams, the developers, for example, on the team get a good understanding of the users? Was that solely the role of the product owner then to get that message across, or did they also get the chance to see users live, kind of?
They well, it was, so first of all, it was hard to get them. So I offered it to them, but the response was very low, and my success rate on this. What I did do, I posted some very good usability test videos to the Slack channel. So then I get some feedback. Some developers did watch it, and they took something away, and then they approached me to discuss it. But I was focusing on the POs because it was their role, and they prioritized the tickets. And if I want to get stuff done, I had to have the buy-in from the PO. At least in this organization, the buy-in from the developer didn't bring me that much. Yes, so
Of course.
that's why. But it's part of the organization. I don't say it's the best setup, but that's how they were running. So that's why I work more closely with the POs than with the developers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's due to the fact also probably that you don't have too many user researchers on the organization, right? And you have to split your capacity across multiple teams, I understand. Then of course you have, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So again, same question to you. Although it's probably answered already by your answer to the other question, but what's the general approach of user research that you have seen? Is that something that you would see outside your teams or inside the team, or what would be your recommendation for an organization? How should they set up so that they are fit for user research and product development teams get a good understanding of users?
You are asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a norm for that. It's called the maturity of the UX maturity of an organization, like 13 questions, and depending on your answer, the company is either on a high level or on a very low level. So you can look this up. This is quite good specified. My personally, I prefer that everyone is exposed to user research, and my aim is to make myself unnecessary, because I teach everyone in the organization to how to run a usability test and analyze it, how to run a listening session or in-depth interview. So I want to make myself obsolete. I don't, as Sonia mentioned before, I don't want to own everything. I don't want to produce everything. You need a shared understanding. It doesn't matter if I have the user understanding. Everyone participating in the product development and in the whole business has to be part of it. I think it's important to have this as a shared understanding, as a shared discussion. So the knowledge has to be distributed. It doesn't help if every insight is in a report that nobody reads and it sits in the drawer. So my different levels is I had quite good success rate with this usability videos. So where I was facilitating the usability test, but as a next step, I asked the POs, the developers, I set up their mobile phones that they can record everything, and they have a prototype. So when they hang out in the bar, they can get their mobile phone, tap the record button, give it to the person next to her, and ask it a task and watch how they solve it, and then bring back a recording of a usability test they can then share with the team. So that's what I aim for, but it's not easy to reach this. So for many reasons, right? Either they are too focused on other stuff, they don't feel comfortable doing it, but that's what I'm always aiming for, so that they really do it themselves. And showing them videos is a way to promote it and to try to get there.
Yeah, can I ask a question, Max? How do you, because I coached entrepreneurs on this as well, and I found that what they find the hardest is asking the questions in the right way. So interviewing, but also during usability tests, to not basically force an opinion upon someone and letting them talk. That's really a skill. So have you found this as well? And is there a way you've been able to train people well on this?
I'm sorry, I missed some part of your question because my daughter was just shouting at me. Can you repeat the quintessence, the summary?
Okay. I found that it's hard for people to ask questions in the right way. Like during interviewing, to not force any opinions upon people, but also to let them talk. Is there a way you found that's effective to teach people that to do that?
I myself make mistakes when I ask questions. So my approach here is that it's better to ask wrong questions and do really a bad moderation of a usability test than not doing a usability test at all. So if you do one, if you have a real user, you are spending like 15 minutes, half an hour. This is absolutely positive. Also, if you fuck up everything that's fuck up able in this time period. So I encourage everyone, just do it. You can iterate on it, you can get better, but probably only in making each mistake first and learn from that. So
yeah.
I have an answer for you, Emily. We have at Unica, we created we have different research formats, as we call them, research formats. So our monthly usability testing that we facilitate, it's called POP, People Observation Party. We called it like this because we wanted to encourage people to attend. So we gave it the name party. And in fact, in the first sessions, we brought popcorn and like if it was in the morning breakfast so that the team wanted to participate. I mean, how can you get developers with food? So that's what we actually did and it worked. So I encourage you to do that. But also we have another format that we developed because we realized I'm not enough. We are not enough. There are so many topics that people in the organization want to get customers' feedback on that it's impossible for us to cover all this demand. And rather than telling them, no, we can't do it, we created a format that we called Voice of the Customer Evening, Voce, also voice. And in fact, this is based on a format that might be known in Austria, especially to those born in Vienna, Testessen. So we basically copied that format, but we did it only for Unica. What this is basically how you imagine speed dating, but speed usability testing. So you have different like small teams have their stations and we invite a good number of participants and the participants have 12 minutes to test whatever it is that this team on that table has to offer. In order to make sure that there is some kind of quality when people are testing their ideas, we had to teach them how to do it. So you have to imagine these are all business owners, product owners, marketing people, etc. People with huge egos invested in their ideas who are suddenly supposed to, in 12 minutes, test the thing that they created. So of course we're working with huge biases and with huge, these kind of idea. The best way for me to ask the question is, do you like it and would you buy it? So we had to coach people out of this, and we found like a mixed approach to this. We give a short theoretical part. We give examples of what not to do. So we show this is how you might want to phrase questions, but this is how you should phrase questions. So it's not just leading, it's all the hypotheticals. So would you do X? We try to explain to people, if you ask a hypothetical question, you're going to get a hypothetical answer. That's not data. Data is facts or experiences from the past. It's like How can you predict future behavior by looking at past behavior? So we teach these kinds of basics to people, but then that's also not enough. So we schedule like test runs with the teams, where the teams are supposed to test their things with us. We are the participants, and as they are testing, their test plan with us, their questions, etc., we can then simultaneously coach them on how to phrase something better and what it is that they're actually trying to find out. So we found that this mix of here's the theory, but also here's like really simulation coaching works best. So if you have that issue, then perhaps it might be worth to schedule really short sessions with the people that are supposed to be asking questions and say, okay, how would you ask me that? How would you want to find out this question that you have? And then you can give them feedback on this.
Cool. Yeah.
Another trick I have been using, if I can interrupt, another
Sure.
good trick is the PO does not test his own or her own product, but the product of the other PO. So the evaluation is done by a PO not involved in the product, and then they tell each other what they have seen in the other product. So you get this ego bias a little bit out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So many interesting recommendations and experiences being shared here. I really appreciate that. We've been touching lots of topics already. Clo, where would you want to enter the conversation now? Like we started from the context, like what type of organization is beneficial for the teams and the users. How would you approach that? What would you want to share about that general context that user research is sort of embedded?
Do you mean in a company?
Mm-hmm.
So I've had different experiences, from very corporate companies with around 15 people in the design team to conducting research on my own because I was conducting it for myself. So, not the same means, time frame, budgets, not as many people to convince, when I'm working just for myself. So maybe to give some information on something that's less, not for an existing product or for an existing company, but for a product or a startup that's just, beginning their journey. I'd say that you're gonna do research all the time, or I advise to do research all the time, but you're not gonna be testing the same things. At first, you're going to want to validate your idea. So maybe you're going to be doing quantitative research, and maybe based off that quantitative research, so that survey, you're going to follow up with qualitative research. So interviews to go deeper into the findings that you had from the survey. So you validate your idea. You want to learn about people's habits, people's environments, their current uses. I think it was Max who was talking about starting with the competitors. That's also a great idea. And then later on, you're going to want to test for user flows and wireframes before getting into the details of the UI. You want to make sure that your user flow makes sense. Yeah, all of that. And then little by little, going from more macro to more micro into the little details of the UI. And by doing remote testing, with participants from everywhere on the planet, very different cultures, you're gonna learn so much more, not just what people from your country perceive and understand from your interface, but what people from other continents, other backgrounds, other cultures, other habits also understand from it.
Okay, thank you very much. And how would you make sure that also the team gets that understanding? How would you make sure that that knowledge is actually understood also by the team?
So if the team at first is not very interested in it, I would maybe bite them with some, a few very interesting, like verbatim insights. If you do video recording or audio recording of your tests, if at some point the participant is having trouble putting the product into the cart and is being obsessed, annoyed by it and wants to leave the website, good, perfect to send to the business owners and product owners. If something is not working, something technical is not working, good, perfect to send to the technical team, developer, CTO, anyone like that. And I think this is a way to get people interested in it and teach them the value of user research if they're not convinced at first. And then if you get to a point where you conduct research, regularly, it's a sprint process. It's very flowy and iterative. Then you can hold, what Sonia was talking about, like regular sessions, weekly sessions or monthly sessions, and really engage as many people in the company as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. So I understand it's also a matter of it's a matter of timing, like when in the process do you do it, and also a matter of capacity and time eventually, both on the team and on the user researchers side eventually, right? I see many organizations struggling with the fact that they have limited user research capacity, and developers are like with full backlogs for the next couple of years and no time for actually getting engaged with users. So it's interesting to see that there seems to be a pattern somewhere. Thank you very much. Nora, I assume you have more questions also, right?
Yeah, I would like to shift the conversation a little bit and focus even more on remote user research. And to start with, let's start with the positives. So for example, especially when you switch towards remote user research, or also in general, what would you say are the advantages? What are things that are a lot more difficult to do when you're not doing remote research? I think some of you already touched on some points, like even personal points, like for example, you don't like traveling. Okay, perfect. Then you could, remote user research has that advantage. Or for example, like Maxi also said that users were sometimes a little bit intimidated by entering this fancy company building. So I would like to talk a little bit more about the advantages that you've found with remote user research. Maybe Clo, Evelyn, Sonia, Max?
I can mention one really big benefit, and that's especially when doing business-to-business research and you have to talk to busy people. It's a lot easier to get hold of them when you can do it remote. So it's challenging, but I've done interviews that taught me a lot while they were on the train, and sometimes that's the only way of getting in touch with these people. So that's one big benefit I found. No. Anyone else?
Clo, Sonia?
I mean, yes, the advantages, for sure. I mean, the obvious one, you can talk to anybody anywhere. So And also, it doesn't really matter if it's business to business. It can be also private or like private persons where people are busy and they might not have time to drive somewhere and sit somewhere in a room and then drive back, etc. So you don't have to worry about all these costs that are associated with this for the participant, or with the time that is associated with usability testing. So you get a lot more variety of participants. What else? I had something in mind, but I was looking at I was looking at the conversation happening in the chat, which was about remote usability testing of a mobile app. And so I'd be curious, because Clo said that she's done this. I'd be curious to hear how she's done this. I know we are steering the conversation somewhere else, but I think that's interesting now.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also might be more connected with certain challenges. At least also in my experience. So maybe actually before we dive into the challenges, and I'm going to ask you for your feedback, I would like to do a small word cloud to get a bit more feedback from the audience. What are the challenges that you've experienced with remote user research?
It wasn't about usability testing, but we've had people, I mean, you have to, exactly like what Bruno also mentioned, people being in areas that are not really quiet enough for research. I've had recently a person do an interview with me while they were biking. So, and that's after us saying, please find a quiet spot where you can, where you can talk. So you have to keep reminding people that this is really important, and yeah, otherwise it's a waste of time for everyone. Yeah. So I don't think there is any way to solve this challenge except for reminding people.
But I do think, like, in some cases, I've talked to people who really couldn't talk to me in any other way. So still thinking, like, I think you, Max, or someone said that like some findings are better than no findings. No input, and in that case, like the project I was working on, I was like, okay, then we just have a call while you're on the train, and there's someone shouting the next station every 5 minutes. It's not ideal, but I found that it was better than nothing. So, and one benefit, by the way, also of remote research is that if someone is in their home, that they can actually take the camera and they can show you their entire home. And it's of course you could visit someone as well, but I find that that's somehow easier than to invite yourself to someone's home, and it gives you so many insights into someone's life. So.
Yeah, and also people are working with their own devices in their own environment, so they feel quite comfortable.
Yeah, more comfortable. And sorry, you weren't done.
Now I was looking at other challenges here for internet bandwidth and technical issues. So that's something that we try to solve by having short test calls with people. So we don't just schedule a session and then we enter the session and try to solve all the issues that are happening in the moment. We schedule test calls with our participants where it's just me and the facilitator, like 10-15 minutes. Because we have to make sure that it works technically, and we don't want, and B, like for us, but B, because we have observers and we have a tight schedule and they are watching, and so they are investing their time, so we have to make sure that there are no technical issues when they are there. So that we dedicate the full time that we have with the participants for the actual usability test. So in those test calls, we not only fix technical issues and internet bandwidth, but we also go through the whole introduction explanation. Like, this is what the test is about, and there's going to be scenarios, and you have to talk out loud. So all of that happens in that test call, and then we don't have to spend time on it anymore in the usability test. It's an additional kind of time for the facilitator that has to schedule the sessions. but it's worth it. It's worth the time because you don't have to fiddle with that stuff in the test. You can just start.
Donya, have you thought about like recording it and just cut the whole introduction part and just show the real me to the observers, so you don't do it in real time?
Well, that's actually what happens. So in the usability test, we are not doing the introduction anymore. So even though we are using the same tool for doing this test calls, so like we use lookback, these test calls get deleted. And then the usability test is the meaty part that gets recorded. No fluff, no explanations. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, if I, by the way, can add something, what also really helps with these calls, because with testing it, you can make sure that there are no problems on your side. In the case there turn out to be problems on the other person's side, just have a plan A, B, C, D. Just have multiple tools ready so you can switch over to something else. Send people a scenario beforehand in PDF format and in email, so they can access it in some way in case things don't work. So yeah, I can recommend it very much as well.
Yeah, I think I actually would like to start with mobile as well. It popped up here. It also already popped up in the chat several times. So first of all, I think one point would be here, how to find easy and affordable tools for testing mobile apps. And yeah, just in general, also how do you conduct, for example, usability testing on mobile. Clo, could you elaborate a little bit on the way you conduct it?
Yeah, sure. So I conducted usability testing on mobile app. I think it was in early 2019. I was building a mobile game. That's a complete other story. But I wanted to do usability testing with people from everywhere around the world. So what I used is an app called TeamViewer. My mobile game was for Android, so I use those apps on Android. I'm not entirely sure whether they exist on iOS or not. But you have TeamViewer Quick Support, which your participants can download. And you have TeamViewer for remote control, which you can download as a researcher. So the main goal of the app is to be able to take control of the other person's phone, which is not why I used it, but it's also a real-time screen sharing service. So I used it like that. That was just to see their phone. And then I was also using a video call service on my laptop and their laptop to hear them talk to them. And I don't know whether TeamViewer allows for recording because it was just user research for myself and with just a team of one. So I haven't looked up whether it has this feature or not.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry.
That's cool. I actually haven't considered using TeamViewer on mobile yet. So that's cool. Other approaches?
Not from me, not for remote usability testing on mobile.
I have recently conducted usability tests remotely on a mobile app. And what I did ask my participants to do is to actually have a Zoom call with the laptop. And I asked them to download an application we wanted to test on their mobile phone. So we actually used, I made use of the so-called laptop hugging procedure, asked them to turn around their laptop and put it on their knees basically, and with hands in front of the camera I could actually ask them to do several activities and see what they were doing on the screen. So this was kind of a workaround and very cheap, of course. The challenge here is that sometimes it takes a while to explain how it works, so I usually use a book to tell them, okay, so here's the camera, you put it on your on your knee, so I can see also your phone via the camera. And sometimes, depending on the lightning, you sometimes don't see the screen very clearly, but at least you get the general idea of where they click and how they struggle. So yeah, this was my workaround and approach so far.
We have, sorry, in the chat, Bruno mentioned using the phone replication to Mac. I guess that's for developer tools, when you can screen on your Mac what's happening on your phone. But I wonder if that's only happening. Yeah, it's only for Apple. Does anybody know if there's something that is for Android, where you can, like, where the participant could really easily just show on the screen what they are doing on the mobile phone, and then you just have a Zoom call and they are screen sharing from their laptop instead of their mobile?
Not easily. I know a solution where you need a Chromecast. So there is a protocol. There's also an open standard called Mirocast or something. It's for mobile phones. But I wouldn't call them easy, and I didn't want to bother my participants with this kind of
that's
setup.
a challenge.
So hugging the laptop is something I have done. I find it difficult to connect to the participants, especially if you don't see them. So when I was doing this hugging the laptop, where basically, right, the people sit like here, as you see now, and they have the mobile phone, and they are doing it like you see the video now. And when I like this method because it's easy and quick and dirty. That's how I like to work. But I always use the first 10 minutes to connect to the participant. So I do a listening session up front, so that I see them and they see my face. And after 10 minutes, when we have talked and we have done the listening session, then I ask them to turn the laptop around and switch on the device. And because you don't see them anymore, you just hear them. That was the hardest thing about this hugging the laptop. And another thing I was doing remotely, it's an unmoderated remote usability test. So there are tools out there. I use one from Austria, from Styria, from Graz. They are called Userbrain, userbrain.net. And they provide you a panel of participants. And as far as I know, they only do it for web pages. But you can also, you post the URL to the web page or to the prototype, and you write the task the participant has to do. And the participant reads it either on the mobile phone or on the desktop, and does this task. And I found this way extremely efficient and useful for a project where most of the traffic on the web page was coming from Google. So it was like organic search traffic, like people searched something and then clicked the web page. So the task I wrote in this remote usability test tool was like, imagine you have searched this and that on Google, and you clicked the first result and you landed on this web page. So I was like simulating how most of the users come to the website, and I was simulating this in this task. So I was completely fine with getting random users from their test panel. So I could specify like what language they speak and from which country they were. And so they did all the recruitment, and also they did all the payment. So it's a very low entrance barrier to do unmoderated usability tests. And it served very well for this course in this project.
Quick question. Oh, have you ever heard of a tool called Mobzen?
No.
It's Mobizen. It's it lets you basically connect. I can put the link in. And by the way, this is a fantastic discussion. I really like it. So I'll put the link in here. Sorry. So it's
Thank you
kind
very
of
much.
it's like a more advanced casting tool, and they charge you per month for it. And you know, I've used it before, or I had teams that have used it before. It's it kind of lets you hit fast, you know, so you don't go through that cycle where, you know, you kind of get everything ready and then you fudge around with tools for 2 weeks and you lose all this momentum, and then you have to fire momentum back up again. And I'm always really cognizant of that during kind of the Kanban runs, is to make sure that, you know, we don't have this devastating gap of, you know, I kind of call it the confidence momentum trough, where it just, you know, you're having to just fire it all back up and then you wind up spending 2 days doing reviews from the momentum you had, and it's just, you basically burn weeks. So this is one of the tools that I've seen that's kind of fits that profile. So
Okay,
Aaron,
thank you very much.
How did you use the tool, Aaron? Can you share some experience you had with this tool?
yeah, I mean, you just, you know, you whatever that population is, you know, that you are, you know, let's say it's 10 users. I don't know how big it is. I mean, I try to start small. Whenever I introduce a new tool, I don't go big, right? Ever. I go small. I try to use it on people I know first. Like, I try to literally use it on people I know, you know, to just see how easy this is to get going. And so it's basically a service, and you pay per month. It's really not built for us, like the developer world. It's really built for the regular people world who want to do this mirroring to their PCs. And so, you know, once you just kind of sign up for it, you know, $3 a month, you just, I'm sorry for that. You just run it, and then I can do a recording, whether it's in Teams or in Zoom, whatever, you know, whatever recording service that you have, and it will mirror their browser. I mean, it'll mirror their phone's full interface. And then it's really more about the mechanics of setting up what I like to call like a clean testing environment. You know, so just a lot of people always have a lot of mess, you know, on their phone or on their computer or everything. And so, you know, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's, you can sign up for it for a month for $3 and, you know, just see how you like it, and then just start playing around with it. What I like is that I actually am not trying to manipulate the human factors of the user, you know, sit this way and you're light and all this. It's just, you know, it's whatever their screen has. I can record it, and as long as I fire up the testing session, that's the only mistake it's easy to make, is you can forget, you know, you do this enough, you kind of forget to do the recording, and, you know, you're kind of scrambling a little bit, but you just kind of have this little, I have a little cheat card basically that I use, and it's just, you know, make sure everyone has that. You go through the steps, record it. I check it. That's the thing I do too now. Anytime I record any testing, I don't let the person go away from me. I validate that the recording was actually good, that it was a quality recording, in case there's any problem. Because sometimes you'll just find weird stuff, you know, that the volume or there was a disconnection for 5 minutes and you didn't know about it. You know, there's just sometimes these, when you have this many interfaces, you'll have these little weird breaks. So sorry, I kind of went off the deep end on this, but hopefully that helps a little.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
Well, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Totally. I noticed we are running out of time already. It was initially scheduled for 7 p.m. and it's 7 p.m. now. And I think people will start dropping out because they have plans already. Still, I would appreciate if you could, after that conversation that we have had, if I could ask the panelists for like one giveaway for the audience, that like one tip that you would give people when it comes to remote user research, as a final statement, maybe before we drop out and enjoy the rest of the evening. So Sonia, do you want to start?
Sure, I can start. Thank you so much for discussion. By the way, you can just connect with me on LinkedIn, and if you have some questions that you didn't get answered, you can also hit me up. I'm happy to answer them in other channels. But my tip would be, it's not particular to do with remote research, but we rediscovered the value of this, is treating your research process like a project in itself that you do retrospectives on, and you try to analyze what worked well and what didn't work well and iterate on it, and the next time you do something else differently. Because many times you just forget about doing this kind of sitting down and, okay, how did it work? Did we manage to get the right participants? Did we manage to get the right technical setup? Did we manage to explain the process well to the team? And we do that regularly, and only that allows us to improve with each set, like round of testing and round of interviews. That would be my tip.
Totally. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you very much. What would be your tip? Max, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I didn't get my name. So since at the beginning in the word cloud, we saw a lot of designers, and maybe they're still around. So my advice would be, I do design for like now 25 years. I started with web pages on PCs, on desktop PCs. And I still make mistakes when I make design. So although I'm doing the same work for 25 years, I still have bugs in my wireframes, in my copywriting, in everything. And without the help of real users, I wouldn't see them. So connecting to real users, even after 25 years, is so important for me. And I'm now in the lucky position that most clients who approach me, I don't have to negotiate if I'm allowed to talk to users or do some involve real users, because when they come to me, that's what they're looking for. So that's a very happy position. But I couldn't do it without users. I couldn't do it without evaluation of real users. So this having conversations and usability tests with real users, it's so important for me. And I really like what Sonia did in her setup of this insurance company. So really huge organization. As soon as they committed to user-centered business, then spending time with the user is part of the OKR, or is part of everyone's schedule, and this should also be valid for smaller companies, or also if you are a one-person design studio. So and even do it if the client doesn't understand it and doesn't pay for it. Even then, I do usability tests and I don't charge them. And I have seen agencies doing the same. If the client doesn't get it and doesn't sign it off, they still do it because they know that's the only way they have a really good design and that the users are able to do a certain task. So spend time with the user is my best advice. Is it, even if it's remote or in person, And if your questions are biased, and if you don't have experience in moderation, and if your usability test tasks are shitty, it doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Max. Right. So, Clo, do you also have a tip for us, maybe, that we can take away?
Yeah, can I share 2 tips?
Yeah. 2, sure.
Cool. So the main tip is to have a remote testing test. So the pre-test that you have to make sure that your protocol is well understood, that everything is smooth, that whatever you use for note-taking, if you do note-taking, I always use a grid for note-taking. Everything is running smoothly, both from your side, the protocol, technically, like just as I would do a physical testing test for physical user research, having a remote testing test is going to allow you to foresee so many issues that you could have beforehand. That's the main tip. And the other tip is that by doing worldwide research, you will have participants with new names that you've never encountered. And my tip is to look up the pronunciation beforehand. You have tons of videos on YouTube, like if you type how to pronounce whatever name, you will find it. And it's just a small thing to make the participant more comfortable, feel more welcome, especially if you're interviewing them. So they're sharing a part of their inner workings. Maybe they're at home or in a personal environment. So it's just a little thing, like having the right name pronunciation, a little thing to make them feel more welcome and more comfortable.
Thank you very much. That's indeed, I think, very important, right? Good.
Actually, just here, a very, very small thing. I think on LinkedIn, so if you find a person on LinkedIn, I think by now they added the feature that you can pronounce your name on LinkedIn. So, I mean, I think more and more people are also going to add the pronunciation of their name on LinkedIn. So that might be also something, especially in the future, where you could look up the pronunciation of a certain name, just on the side.
Thanks for that. Right. Evelyn, do you also have tips for us?
Yeah, my main tip will be, and that's coming back to my earlier comment about just the importance of communicating research findings well. Like if you can convince the team to watch the sessions, that's amazing, and I would definitely try to get it. But especially if not everyone can watch, I think it's also the responsibility of UX researchers to communicate it in a good way. And I think that's why it's vital to learn as a UX researcher to write with the reader in mind. So if you're writing for developers, like get really good at online communication, get really good at online message writing, writing with a reader in mind and what they are looking for, and respecting their time, because that eventually you want the research to have impact. And especially if you're working with a remote team, you will have to try that much harder to get them to actually read it. So yeah, also just really invest in becoming a master in online communication. And I think that's a thing with remote working anyways, but yeah. So that's my biggest advice.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. It was such an interesting conversation. It was really great following you, and would appreciate to continue for the rest of the evening. I'm really hoping that sometime soon we can have an in-person meeting again. That has to wait for the time being, I understand, but we can enjoy the benefits of online meetups for a while. Thanks again from my side. And Nora, what do you want to add?
Thank you also from my side. Thank you to the panelists for participating. thank you also to everyone in the audience for commenting, for asking questions, for being there. I think it's actually quite interesting how, even though, I mean, we always have different sessions on different topics, panel discussions about things like remote hiring, but now UX and so on. Some of the tips actually come back. So something like communication, having really good communication skills is so crucial for remote work. And if you want to rewatch some of the panel discussions that we've already had, I will share the YouTube channel that we just opened up in the chat. So you can later, first of all, you can also rewatch this panel discussion. I think it will be online in maybe a week or so. And then you can also rewatch the other sessions that we've had already. So again, thank you very much. And I think that was it from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well, by the way, Nora and Michael, for organizing this.
Welcome. It was great having you. So I hope to see you sometime soon, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
I just shared the YouTube channel also in the chat. And also, if you want to follow us on Twitter, well, you should already be part of the meetup group. But in general, you can also find all the links to the different social channels that we have on this website.
Thanks so much. You guys do a great job. I mean, I'm calling in from the US, so it's
Yeah, thanks for that. What's the time at your place?
it's 1:14 or 13:14.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still early. You guys are getting ready for dinner. Sorry about it earlier. I wasn't that I didn't contribute a lot early on because I got all my food deliveries at the same time. So I had to just sort gloves and tables and all cleaning and all that stuff. So, but no, appreciate it. It's a fantastic topic you guys had today. I really appreciate it.